Hello, I'm Mia Neidhardt.
And I'm Basil Hariri.
And we are here to share our audit findings from our audit of the Vanpool program. So today, I am going to share some of our findings around barriers to achieving Vanpool's equity goals and discuss the potential for unintended consequences of the plan to electrify the Vanpool fleet. Then Basil will share some of the gaps in the program's risk management approach and discuss issues with the broad personal use policy. Metro Transit Mobility Services has worked to respond to the changing commuting environment and to rebuild ridership, and they're doing it in a way that prioritizes their equity goals. During the pandemic, Metro Transit Mobility Services has worked to begin a Vanpool improvement project to reimagine how the program can serve riders. This project centers equity by focusing on serving customers with the greatest need of public transit. As part of this effort, Mobility Services has developed a pilot program to offer lower fares for low-income workers in the city of Kent by using grant funding. It has also partnered with community organizations, county organizations, to provide transportation for temporary workers experiencing housing instability. But despite these efforts, current participants are disproportionately high income. In 2023, the Vanpool program conducted a survey which showed that over 80% of respondents had an annual household income above $100,000, which is about the King County median. And more than a third had an annual household income over $200,000. What's more, many of these high-income earners receive full or partial subsidies from their employers. For example, those that work for large tech companies. And there are multiple potential reasons why the program could skew toward high-income riders. For example, the nature of the program works well for predictable and consistent commute times and might not be as well suited for shift work. But lower income riders might also find the program too expensive. For a 5-person group traveling 50 miles round trip, 5 days a week, the monthly cost per rider would be around $150. In comparison, one type of monthly pass for the fixed route Metro Transit bus service is $99 for regular adult fare or $36 for low-income riders through the Orca Lift program. The Orca Lift program does not extend to the Vanpool program. And this is because King County Code requires that Vanpool fares must recover 100% of operational and capital costs plus 25% of administrative costs. As a result, Mobility Services has to rely on limited and temporary grants to fund pilot programs offering reduced fares. Without guaranteed funding long-term, these pilots are less sustainable over time and may be less attractive to potential riders. So we recommend that Metro Transit create a more affordable Vanpool fare option that is sustainable without reliance on grant funding. And there are multiple ways that Metro Transit could achieve this, each with advantages and trade-offs. Without changing code, Metro Transit could differentiate fares based on income. Low-income participants could pay less so long as the overall costs were covered by higher fares from other riders, either with higher incomes or employer subsidies. Alternately, Metro Transit could propose code changes for council consideration. For example, to exempt priority populations from the fare recovery requirement. Moving on to electrification, Metro Transit has a goal of transitioning to an entirely zero-emission Vanpool fleet by 2030. This has the potential to increase program costs. In their feasibility study from 2021, Metro Transit estimated that costs could increase by as much as 68% compared to the status quo. I want to note that there's a lot of uncertainty in these estimates, in part because the electric van industry is still developing. But Metro Transit has not estimated how potential increases in costs would affect fares through the cost recovery requirement. If fares increase to cover potentially higher costs, it could price some participants or employers out of the program. About half of Vanpool survey respondents reported that they would drive a single occupancy vehicle to work if they did not have access to Vanpool. So if electrification ended up pushing participants out of the program and they were instead to drive alone in a vast gas-powered vehicle, the fleet electrification efforts could end up increasing net emissions in the county, despite reducing emissions of the Vanpool fleet itself. In short, without careful planning and monitoring, electrification efforts have the potential to conflict with Metro Transit's own environmental and equity goals. So we recommend that Metro Transit analyze the impact of electrification on fares and ridership, update this analysis as new information becomes available, and use the information to inform the zero emission strategy.
All right, thank you, Mia. Today I'll take you through some of our findings relating to how the Vanpool program manages its vehicles. The first is that Vanpool's risk management system is inconsistent with actual risk. Like many comparable programs, Metro Transit's Vanpool program uses a point system to analyze driver safety and respond to incidents. In this system, volunteer drivers receive points if they're involved in an incident. After receiving a set number of points, drivers are temporarily or permanently disqualified from driving Vanpool vehicles. The number of points they receive depends on the type of incident, so more points for more serious incidents. And while the point system does track and respond to risk, there's some overlap between incident categories. This means that the number of points may not reflect actual risk. For example, based on these categories in the current point system, it's unclear if a driver speeding by 5 miles per hour in a school zone should receive 4, 3, or 2 points. This leaves some points up to the discretion of staff, which could lead to inconsistent treatment of drivers. Additionally, the Vanpool program has not had a risk specialist since 2022, despite having an allocated FTE for the position. Other management and staff have picked up some risk management work, but they're unable to complete proactive risk management in addition to their roles. For example, staff do not proactively analyze which types of incidents cost the county the most in insurance payouts, which is something a risk specialist might do. During the course of this audit, Vanpool leadership indicated that they began recruiting this position. Vanpool also does not have timely information about some incidents. Current policy states that drivers must inspect the vehicle every time they drive it and report any damage found within 2 days. However, we found this policy to be ineffective for some incident categories. For example, less than a quarter of all unexplained damage incidents from 2018 to 2023 were reported by the driver. Instead, they were reported by employees at contracted maintenance garages or the Vanpool distribution center. Unexplained damage incidents are incidents with no available cause. For example, if the Vanpool van was damaged while it was parked and no one was around to see it. And these are not a small category. There were almost 300 incidents classified as unexplained damage from 2018 to 2023. Here are some examples of damage that went unreported. As you can see, drivers did not report damage for long enough that rust developed in some of the cases. Drivers not reporting damage delays repairs, which can lead to unmitigated safety risks or increased repair costs for the county. To close these gaps in Vanpool's risk management, we recommend that Vanpool refine its point system to align with relative risks of violations and implement controls to ensure Vanpool drivers report unexplained damage incidents in a timely manner. Finally, we found that Vanpool's personal use policy was inequitable. The current policy allows volunteer drivers to drive the Vanpool up to 40 miles for free each month, including free gas. This policy only applies to volunteer drivers who provide proof of a personal vehicle and insurance. And while this guarantees that drivers are insured when they drive the vans for personal use, It excludes drivers who cannot afford a personal vehicle or insurance. This means the personal use policy inequitably favors higher income participants by providing additional benefit to them. This policy also differs from other Vanpool programs, which restrict personal use to use that is incidental to the commute only. To remedy this inequitable policy, we recommend that the Vanpool program revise its personal use policy to align it with other Vanpool programs in the state by narrowing the policy and only including incidental use to the commute. So, to summarize what we've discussed today, Mia talked about the Vanpool program, or barriers that the Vanpool program faces to achieving its equity goals, many of which center on the cost recovery requirement. Also, how the fleet electrification efforts could have unintended consequences that program leadership should consider. And then I talked to you about several gaps in the risk management system and the overly broad personal use policy and how it is inequitable. In our report, we dive much deeper into each of these issues and others we did not have time to discuss in this presentation, as well as our recommendations on how to address them. You can find the full report on our website. Thanks for listening.